Finally, after 33 years, the long-awaited Top Gun sequel has landed. Well, not quite. It was supposed to land in 2019, which would have been 33 years after the original, but because of delays driven by its complex flight sequences, not to mention that pesky pandemic, Top Gun Maverick will be landing in May. Finally, after 36 years. Well, unless it gets delayed again for some reason. But assuming it doesn't, let's take a closer look at some of those complex flight sequences. How did they pull them off? How did they prepare? And most importantly, will Tom Cruise run? Directed by the late great Tony Scott, the original Top Gun was not just one of the most iconic movies of the 1980s, a movie that arguably sums up everything about that gloriously tasteless decade. It's also a revolutionary picture as far as its own flight sequences were concerned, with aerial shots that are still breathtaking today. However, there were some lessons that needed to be learned between 1986 and now. According to Uber producer Jerry Bruckheimer, most of the in-flight shots of the original actors in their F-14 jets ended up being completely unusable. The actors were so unprepared for the sheer power of the G-force that their faces were contorted and twisted, with some of them nearly throwing up. Wouldn't really have suited the decade's sexiest, most stylish blockbuster, now would it? Leave it to Tom Cruise to learn from the movie's first mistakes and insist on perfection for the new one. Of course, everybody by now knows that Mr. Cruise is, shall we say, pretty invested in the movies that he makes. That guy could not phone it in if he tried. He probably doesn't even understand the concept of phoning it in. In fact, even when he is on the phone, he's still giving it 200%. See?
Show me the money!
After all, this is the man who, after being told that his insurance company wouldn't insure him to climb up the tallest building in the world for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, he simply fired the insurance company. A lot of Cruise's attention to detail and insistence on preparation is a matter of experience. He's been in the business a long time, and he's a problem solver. When making the new Top Gun, he was very conscious of the lack of preparation he and his fellow actors had back in 1986, which made the shoot very difficult. Naturally, he wanted to avoid that for Top Gun Maverick. The solution? Tom Cruise Boot Camp, an intense training program designed and part funded by Cruise himself and undertaken by all the young actors in the movie. This was not your standard Hollywood training though. Of course, there was a lot of strenuous exercise, weight training, and protein shakes, but the main focus was on getting the actors ready to fly. Cruise is a licensed aerobatic pilot, and as part of his program, the actors worked their way up from Cessna planes to aerobatic planes all the way up to Super Hornets. They needed to be comfortable with the intense G-forces that pilots have to deal with when flying at high speed, and it sounds like Cruise was a tough taskmaster. Some of the actors, again, found themselves throwing up from the sheer intensity of the gravity. Actor Miles Teller, who plays Rooster in the movie, says that all the actors got put through the ringer. As well as months of punishing physical exercise and flight training, the actors also had to brave the Dunker, a naval torture chamber where participants are strapped to a chair, blindfolded, dropped in water, and spun around upside down. Oh, then they have to find their way out, or, risk drowning. Sounds like fun, huh? I wonder if you can hire one for a bachelor party. Anyway, it all sounds pretty intense, and that's the way Cruise likes to do things, and it certainly seems like the on-screen results will be worth it. Miles Teller even sounds like maybe he kind of enjoyed it. He's quoted as saying, "We were all mini Toms making this movie." Imagine that, an army of mini Tom Cruises. It's honestly hard to overemphasize how committed Cruise was to this production. One of his conditions for returning for a Top Gun sequel in the first place was that he did not want any green screen or CGI trickery for the flight sequences. If he was going back to the danger zone, he was gonna do it for real. And well, what do you expect? Of course, audiences are now pretty familiar with the Cruiser's quest for ultimate realism. It was only a few years ago when making Mission Impossible Fallout that he became the first actor to execute a halo jump, a military parachute dive from 25,000 feet in the air. Still, zooming around behind the controls of a plane is arguably a step above jumping out of one. Cruise is a qualified pilot, of course, and famously did a lot of his own helicopter flying in Fallout. He even flew his own personal P-51 fighter plane while making Maverick. The actor wanted to fly solo in an F-18 Super Hornet for Top Gun Maverick, but even after requesting special permission from the US Navy, his request was denied. The reason? Well, it's not totally clear, but it could be because a single F-18 jet costs over $70 million, which equates to nearly half of the entire budget for the new movie. Cruise did get to sit in a Super Hornet at least, though he had a Navy pilot quietly controlling it from behind him. And that was not the only naval entanglement that Cruise had to deal with while making the movie. There were two particular sequences where he and the filmmakers had to ask special permission from the Navy. One was an extremely low altitude sequence that you'll have to see in the trailers, while the other saw Tom Cruise becoming the first actor to take off and land from a US Navy aircraft carrier. Man, this guy's pretty serious about his bucket list, huh? Of course, it's all very well for Tom Cruise and the rest of the cast to spend months and months lifting weights and zooming around in various types of planes, but that's all for nothing if you don't have the technology to capture these thrilling aerial sequences. Luckily, director Joseph Kosinski wasn't just sitting around drinking cocktails while everybody else was getting in shape. Along with his production team, he spent a year working closely with the US Navy to develop a way of filming inside the state-of-the-art fighter jets that would be used for the movie. And with a little help from Sony, they cracked the code. The result? The Rialto, a much smaller version of the existing Venice camera rig. With this brand new specialized camera setup, specifically designed for the movie, Kosinski and his team were able to fit 6 IMAX quality cameras inside the cockpit of a fighter jet and 4 on the outside so that they could capture super high quality shots in camera during flight without the need to fake it in post-production, meaning that the filmmakers could edit together whole scenes with all the angles they could possibly need. Mr. Kosinski, we're impressed. We can see why Tom Cruise likes you. It's easy to get caught up in all the airborne adrenaline, but plenty of important stuff needed to happen on the ground before the actors could take to the skies. While they were not actually controlling their multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art fighter jets, they still needed to memorize every detail of each flight, down to the individual buttons that needed pressing, so that they wouldn't be taken by surprise. To that end, the filmmakers constructed exact replicas of the plane cockpits on the ground so that the actors could rehearse safely. After all, every take that they shot in the air cost a lot of money. And just to give you an idea of how much work goes into these individual shots, according to Joseph Kosinski, some days they would work for 16 hours straight and come away with a grand total of 40 seconds of usable footage. These guys should try making a Wallace and Gromit movie next. Tom Cruise in claymation. Is that something we want to see? One thing that many Top Gun fans have been wondering is, why now? Why do a sequel? After all, Tom Cruise tends to avoid sequels. He may be best known these days for the Mission Impossible franchise, but those movies were kind of outliers in his filmography. Generally, he likes to move forward rather than return to old characters. Well, we know that Cruise only wanted to make a sequel if he could do all the flying stuff for real, but it also seems that he was waiting for the right story to come along. Bringing in his regular co-conspirator Christopher McQuarrie to write the script was a big help, and it seems that Cruise's age will definitely be a factor in the story. Pete Maverick Mitchell is told in the trailer that he should be a general by now, and yet he's still a captain. Cruise has also said that the relationship between Maverick and Miles Teller's Rooster will be the emotional spine of the movie. Rooster is, of course, the son of Goose, who met a nasty end in the first movie. Maverick clearly still feels responsible for his friend's death, so coming face to face with the guy's son is probably going to cause some heavy emotional fireworks for him. And yeah, seems like this movie's going to be dealing with some heavy stuff. Obviously, we all love this high-flying, high-octane, high-adrenaline malarkey, but there's one big question on everybody's lips. Namely, will Tom Cruise do any running in Top Gun Maverick? Obviously, it's a movie about flying planes really fast, so there won't necessarily be a particular need for this kind of speed, but come on. Surely it's part of the package now. Think back to Mission Impossible Fallout, or further back to Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, or further back than that to War of the Worlds, and so on. What we're saying is the guy likes to run and we like to watch him run. So will he run in the new Top Gun? Unfortunately, despite hours of research, our findings are currently inconclusive. All we can do at this point is hope. Sure, Maverick is going to be cool, but what other classic Tom Cruise movies deserves a sequel? How about a legacy sequel to The Color of Money, with Cruise taking on the Paul Newman role? Or alternatively, a Cocktail sequel? We bet he can still do the hippie hippie shake.